The date is January 10th, 2018. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall by mail to the Ridgewood News, the record and by submission to all persons entitled, the same as provided by law. This schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilman Hache.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Seaton.
Here.
Councilman Voigt. Absent. Councilwoman Walsh.
Here.
Mayor Knudsen.
Here. Please rise for the flag salute. Please join us in a moment of silence for our men and women serving our nation, our first responders. Thank you. Before we go to public comment, I'd like to invite Sarah Chan up. She's going to speak to us a moments about her new business, physical therapy. Hello and welcome.
Just make sure the button is on. There's a light.
Is there a little green light?
Okay.
There you go.
Perfect, Sarah.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor for you to invite me to introduce myself. I've just opened my business physical therapy practice on Goffel Road in October, and I specialize in adult orthopedics, functional manual therapy, women's health, vestibular rehabilitation, pelvic floor rehabilitation for female and male pelvic health issues. So I look forward to serving the Ridgewood community, and thank you so much for inviting me to introduce myself.
And just one more time, the address?
It's 555 Goffel Road in Ridgewood.
Okay, great. Very good. So welcome, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go to public comment. Good evening.
Warwick Hollaby, 374 Evergreen Place. My favorite movie of all time is Casablanca, and my favorite line in that movie is Captain Renault saying how he was shocked, there's gambling in the back. The mayor being stunned at the Parkmobile contract rings just as true. What an insult to the intelligence of the Ridgewood community. Thanks for the excellent reporting by Nicholas Katzban in the Ridgewood News. I have the article here. Stunned. It is clear that the mayor and deputy mayor were fully aware of the Parkmobile contract. To blame the shortfall in parking revenues on Parkmobile, one program that has worked well for the village, is a good example of political cowardice, if not blatant dishonesty. I have here the minutes of the Village Council meeting of 11 March 2015, which indicates an in-depth discussion of the ordinances dealing with Parkmobile. The pricing was discussed at length, and both Mayor Knudsen, and Deputy Mayor Seaton were intimately involved, and both voted in favor. Stunned? Who's stunned? I'm stunned. I ask that the village CFO hire an outsider to analyze the parking revenue shortfall. I can imagine many things contributing to it, including the game, frankly, that the village council played in the past year with the allocation of parking spaces. I remember there's one discussion after another. Move these here, move this there, raise this, lower that. What effect that might have had, one should find out. On another issue, I just discovered that the mayor's home is used to sell tires. I have with me a printout of a site called manta.com, which indicates a business called Tires to You LLC with an address of 120 Circle Avenue, Ridgewood. Now, I have nothing against someone using their home to do an honest piece of business, and I'm sure this is. But I'm concerned about the fire hazard if tires are stockpiled. If a fire breaks out, the pollution can be overwhelming. Is the fire department aware of this? What safeguards are being taken? May I suggest the village manager send the fire chief to investigate? Thank you.
Great, so I'm just going to respond to those two things. The good news is we're not selling tires from our house. The bad news, if anyone has a flat. Importantly, and thank you, Mr. Hallaby. Just to be clear,
I'll
thank
put this
you.
for the record.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Park Mobile contract and the discussion on 3/11/2015 revolved around an ordinance to apply a 35% user fee, a 35-cent user fee, which was unanimously approved. At the time, there was also further discussion about a percentage and of charge percentage and a transaction fee, which was originally only approved at 0, and that was described as temporary, and temporary does not mean a 3-year contract signed by a village manager. So thank you very much.
And your recollection is quite different from what the
I believe,
newspaper
wasn't
said.
the resolution passed in February?
Yes, that was February.
Authorized the village manager to negotiate the contract with no additional cost to the village?
Yes, but the ordinance that Mr. Hallaby is speaking about is the 35-cent user fee that was intended to cover those charges. It was unanimously approved, and those transaction fees were described as temporary until the Square card was synchronized with the Park Mobile system, and I hardly would define a signed 3-year contract as temporary or transitional. So, anyone else?
Hello, good evening. Marcia Ringel, 250 Ferris Place, Ridgewood. Here on behalf of the Preserve Graydon Coalition. Many years ago when I was young, there was a very popular group called the Mamas and the Papas. And one of their more popular songs was Dream a Little Dream of Me, which I think was a solo by Mama Cass. And there's a line in it that has been going through my mind for months. I won't attempt to sing it, but it's bird singing in the sycamore tree, dream a little dream of me. And many of us have been dreaming a little dream of that sycamore tree and all the birds that have been singing in it for probably 100 years. And I'm aware that tonight there will be a discussion of probably what happens to that tree. Chipping would be a mistake, so the question of kind of getting creative if the tree cannot be made to survive. Obviously, I hope it can, but from what I've heard, that may not be possible. About 4 or 5 years ago, I went to a little fair at the Arboretum in Glen Rock, and there was someone selling at a table bowls and other things that he had made from reclaimed wood, calls it found wood. His name is Bob Kahn, K-A-H-N, and he calls his business Concepts in Wood. I spoke with him, I called him today, and I said, is that feasible? First of all, is sycamore good for this sort of thing? He said, yes, he has worked with sycamore, and I had found that on the internet also, some pretty pictures of bowls and things. So one thought to possibly consider, very tentative idea, would be to invite him to look at the wood and make it available to him to make something out of, little things that we could conceivably sell, possibly on our website, with obviously some of the profits to go to the person who spent all that time making it, but he agreed that he would give some of it back. And maybe we could then get it all together and donate it for a replacement tree or something like that. I mean, it's one person making all these things, so it takes a while. It's not going to happen in 5 minutes. It's a thought, okay? If there's, because, you know, there's thoughts of like selling splinters to people or something like that. That's not too cool, but people like to buy things and know that they're donating. We learned that at the Preserve Graydon Coalition when we created note cards and other items. And they're not unwilling to pay a little more than it's really worth on the market, knowing it's partly a donation. So that's my one thought. I would like to also say that knowing there was a report, I submitted an OPA request for that report on Sunday night for receipt on Monday morning, and I was told that I was not going to be allowed to see it because the council had not yet discussed it.
Marcia, I'm sorry. The time was the beeper
Oh,
went off.
I'm sorry, I
Okay,
missed
it's all right.
it.
Thank you.
All right. So I thought I should have been allowed to see it. I didn't see why not.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Knudsen and members of the Village Council. I am Beth Abbott. I live at 828 Morningside Road, and I'm joined by Sheila Brogan, who resides at 302 Kensington Drive. We are co-chairs of Age Friendly Ridgewood. We are a nonprofit collaboration of Ridgewood citizens and organizations working for the past 2 years on making Ridgewood aware of the needs of those 55 and older and creating projects aimed at addressing those needs. Because of our grant funding from the Henry and Marilyn Taub Foundation, plus additional funding from the New Jersey Department of Transportation, we were able to conduct a senior walkability study last June, which we have respectfully submitted to you. During that study, professionals from NJDOT, WSP, and Civic Eye Collaborative facilitated a workshop presenting information on senior mobility, conducted and led a field walk to observe and experience senior mobility issues along Maple Avenue, the CBD area, and the train station, and finished the day brainstorming to discuss what was observed and to solicit ideas on improving conditions. Deputy Mayor Seaton attended along with representatives from our engineering and police departments, Charlie DeMarco, Chair of the Citizen Safety Committee, Deanna Shablik, Bridget Bogart, and older residents from the village, share houses, and Ridgecrest. The result is a professional report with many excellent suggestions about how we can make Ridgewood more walkable and safe for all Ridgewood Village residents, not just seniors. During the walkability study, we were made aware of the fact that some of our crossing guards would use the summer to audit Ridgewood sidewalks for problems. Now that crossing guards are outsourced, the sidewalk summer audit may not happen routinely. So a group of 8 residents volunteered their time this November to walk the sidewalks in the Central Business District, looking for sidewalks that posed tripping hazards because of cracks or breaks based on the measurement parameters provided to us by Chris Riddeschauser. With all of our age-friendly efforts, we have been grateful to the attention and dedication Chris Riddeschauser has shown to the issues we have raised. We view both the walkability study and the sidewalk audit as a way to support his work, knowing how much he and his department have on their plates. We also appreciate the enthusiasm shown by the Citizen Safety Committee, who spent their December meeting discussing and reviewing the study and the audit. They too support our efforts in asking the village officials to review the materials, budget for improvements, and continue the work the village has already begun to make Ridgewood a safe and walkable community. The sidewalk audit has been emailed to all of you in PDF form recently. One very troubling area is the intersection of Franklin and Broad. There, curb cuts are missing and the street crossing is long, and the sidewalks along Franklin on the south side are dangerous. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. We are happy to discuss this further with you at your convenience.
Okay, just one quick question. Do you want to just plug your website, and also will you post that on your website, the information that you've shared with us?
The PDFs and
Yeah,
yes.
so if you just want to give a shout out.
agefriendlyridgewood.org.
Okay,
And
great.
we also have a Facebook page, Age Friendly Ridgewood.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bill McCandless, 71 Ridge Road in Ridgewood, obviously, sorry. The village taxpayers face a new reality this year, one that the fiscal state of the village has not faced before. And the decisions and progress around certain issues will need to be re-examined coming into this year. And we're going to need to kind of clear the decks on a few things and re-examine how we prioritize things. And we need to ask first and foremost, are we burdening the taxpayers with new taxes and new fees? And if we are, is there a return on that investment greater than those taxes and fees? And can we prove it? One place where we cannot and have not been able to prove that is the proposal for the garage. The garage, the case against the garage is strong. It is powered by undisputable facts. It needs to be considered before plunging the taxpayers of Ridgewood deeper into debt and creating more congestion on our overcrowded and overstressed roads. Each recent study done on the garage proposal show there is more than enough parking capacity in the CBD and what we have is not utilized. There is no fiscal plan for the garage that pays for itself or through increased CBD tax receipts. It is a net loss. Traffic at every intersection in and around the CBD on both sides of the track will be worse with the addition. The intersections in and around the CBD on both sides of the tracks are already over and at capacity in many cases and are well below substandard for the existing traffic. There's no logical argument for a garage. The only thing a garage will add is taxpayer debt, higher fees for every shopper and diner, and more congestion across an already congested set of intersections. Why add what we don't need, can't afford, and impose worse conditions on anyone who wants to come to Ridgewood? I've listened, read, and consumed all sides of the conversations and see no compelling case that can be supported by facts, case studies, or logic that benefits the public good. I would point the council to the coming revolution of autonomous cars and vehicles also. This reality is closer than the public realizes, less than 10 years away. The need for more parking capacity will be hugely impacted by the coming reality, by all accounts. How does more debt and congestion serve the village? The downside deeply outweighs the limited upside of a few more spots in the most congested part of the village. Please maximize what we have, lease open new lots where possible, stop the meter feeding by employees, and plan for the driverless future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Anyone else? Okay. With that, we'll move on to the regular meeting, but before we do, I just wanted everyone to wish Councilwoman Walsh a very happy birthday. So happy birthday, Councilwoman Walsh.
Thank you.
Okay, our first item for discussion is a bond ordinance for the water utility. This is for the car GAC treatment system. Construction cost estimates were provided by Arcadis US for the project. This is a granular activated carbon treatment system at the Carwell Field to remove compounds PFOA, PFNA, and PFOS in the well water. It'll consist of 4 steel vessels with granular activated carbon that will filter the contaminants from the water. And that facility currently has a maximum output of 1,000 gallons per minute or 1.44 million gallons per day. The cost to replace this volume with purchased water is estimated at $5,000 per day or 1.8 million per year. Therefore, the bond ordinance at 3.4 million, and the total ordinance would actually be 3.570 million because of the bonding requirements. So this is something that we're hoping to introduce in January so they can go out to bid in February. New Jersey Drinking Water Quality Institute has new standards, as well as Governor Christie proposed new standards as well, and so they're measuring them in even more minute numbers, and so this treatment is necessary.
Okay. Questions or comments? No?
Okay, the next item is award of a professional services contract for public policy consultant. We have a proposal from Mumford Jewelers to provide professional services to the Village of Ridgewood for a public policy consultant. They will help Ridgewood Water and Ridgewood Village to better understand the changing public policy forces in Trenton and Washington as it relates to New Jersey's water infrastructure. This will give Ridgewood Water the opportunity to have input on new legislation and to prepare in advance of any new regulation affecting the industry. The mayor and I and Mr. Calby met with Mike Julis. The contract would be for 4 months in an amount not to exceed $13,600, and this would be so that we could see what benefits this could provide us. The hope is that Ridgewood Water would become more involved and have a seat at the table when legislation is being adopted, and to give input and to be a key player that they look to for a smaller water system as opposed to like a Suez or a bigger water system. So we think it would be beneficial to do this, and I don't know if the mayor wants to say anything additional.
Yeah, so I actually thought that this was one of the best undertakings we can engage in. This was an opportunity to really understand what was going on down in Trenton, the kind of conversations at a very early stage, and have significant input into how that may or may not impact our own water utility. One of the things, I don't know that it's attached to everyone's document, is well, I'll make sure everyone gets it, was the email where it was described. I think one of the questions that was asked was what is the current state of the number of different water utilities throughout the state, and it's really an amazing read to tell you that I think there were 3 larger water utilities. Maybe Rich can come up and speak to that. But let's just see. I'm just looking for my copy of it.
Good evening. I don't have a copy as well, so I'm going to try to do it off of memory.
Yeah, I'm trying, I do have a copy of it somewhere here, but, okay.
But I guess out of the 500 and so municipalities in the state, over 300 of them are operated by privately owned utilities. I think 4 consisting of, or 3. Suez, there's a company down south whose name's escaping me, New Jersey American. And then there's other public larger utilities like Passaic Valley, Middlesex Water, and then there's us in the middle, and then hundreds of other small utilities. So we're unique in that we serve more than one municipality. Majority of small utilities just serve their local constituents.
So I think it's important to understand that this would give us a pulse, a pulse on what's actually happening as it's happening, and rather than finding out things after the fact and scrambling. I mean, I think we're well positioned, but it's important that we have those ears there,
Right.
Eyes and ears.
Definitely. The genesis of it came out of 2 recent acts that we were totally unaware of. One was the Water Quality Accountability Act, and then the new contaminant levels that Heather spoke of. These are all good things, but we had no input at all into the legislation. Where these are things we do every day, and they're now being thrown at us with deadlines that, if we had the input on, we could offer a lot of good, sound advice. And this policy initiative is already paying benefits. On Monday, I attended a joint legislative committee meeting down Trenton on water infrastructure. I was able to meet some of the key players that drafted a report and give them a feel of what Ridgewood Water does and how we're different than a lot of the larger privately owned utilities and the small utilities. And they've invited me to come and speak at their office in the near future. So we'll definitely get a bigger seat at the table moving forward.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
At some point, I guess I'll find that document.
Yeah, why don't you just stay in case there are additional questions on the following items. The next one is for a change order for the booster transfer station improvements. This was awarded in 2016 for professional services. At this time, an additional $11,971.45 is required to complete work beyond the original original professional engineering services contract scope. This work consists mainly of services for obtaining approvals from Midland Park that were not originally anticipated, which resulted in redesign of one of the facilities. Change order number 1 would be awarded to the same original professional services award, which is DJ Agarian and Associates out of Fairfield, New Jersey, and it's budgeted for in the Ridgewood Water Capital Improvement Budget.
Any questions, comments?
The next one is award of contract under state contract for purchase of chlorine analyzers and supplies. Ridgewood and Ridgewood Water anticipate exceeding the statutory limit of $17,500 for these materials, and therefore we need a council resolution to continue purchasing these items. This is in the Water Department operating budget.
Questions, comments? Moving on.
The next one is a bid rejection and also award of a contract for the Cedar Hill Reservoir Rehabilitation. The Cedar Hill Reservoir Rehabilitation had a bid report and tabulation with recommendations by DJ Agarian once again. They include a base bid for the rehabilitation work and an alternate bid for coating the interior of the reservoir dome. In getting the proposals back, the recommendation is to award only the base bid with allowance, as the alternate bid proposals for the interior dome coating exceeded the engineer's estimate. For the base bid and allowance, the low bidder is Fred Devon's Construction with a cost proposal of $303,000. Based on prior negative experience on a current Ridgewood water project, which is the water main relocations at stream crossings, which we are currently still, they're still working on, we're requesting that that bid be rejected. The second low bidder had a cost proposal of $324,800, and that was DN Tanks of Wakefield, Massachusetts. And so DJ Agarian and Mr. Calby are recommending the award of the project to DN Tanks. This is required under the U.S. EPA Administrator Order. This should be awarded by January 15th. However, our meeting's on the 17th, and Mr. Calby has received an informal extension to that date. This will allow time for the work to be completed by July 15th. In reality, though, because of the upcoming high demand season, the tank will actually need to be in service by April 15th. DJ Agarian is the engineer of record. They prepared the construction documents, reviewed all the bids, and they'll assist Ridgewood Water with administering the construction phase. The funding has been accounted for in the Ridgewood Water capital budget.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, so it seems that 3 of the bidders misinterpreted the bid sheets. So in fact, we don't know what the actual, how the bids could have come in compared to what is proposed here. Are we better off just going back and redoing the whole bid?
On the basis of where we recalculated those alternate items to sit, it turns out they way exceeded what our estimates would have been. When we feel it's beneficial at this time to just proceed with the base bid, and there's an alternate allowance in there in case we find any types of fractures in the dome. We have an allowance of money in there to make that repair in a unit price. We kind of weighed that option of going back out, but where we're on the time, we'd actually have to fast forward the project to a whole nother half a year. We'd have to delay, instead of doing it this season. It would delay every tank project thereafter as well. So we didn't feel it was feasible at this time to rebid.
So I actually, I'm with you on this, Rich, but I just was curious as to how, did you have an idea as to why 3 of them would have misinterpreted? Was there?
It's funny, they're given the opportunity to ask questions during the bid process, and they never do. And to me, it could have been a little confusing, but otherwise it was clear in the document. It said, here's your base bid allowance, base bid plus allowance,
Right.
alternate item, and then base bid plus alternate plus allowance. So it was spelled out exactly what you needed to add, but still there was confusion because often I think they add these numbers at the last minute. But overall, we were able to interpret from the base numbers and alternates what they would have been, and on that basis be able to quantify what the real results were and get to a true award. And in this case, even the second lowest bidder is below the construction estimate.
Right. Got it.
Although we wouldn't want to spend that extra bit of money, the negative experience we've had with the low bidder is not worth it.
Yeah. I agree. Okay. Anyone else?
And the final one under Ridgewood Water is the bid rejection for the 2018 well improvements. Bids were received. One bid was received from A.C. Schultz. We're going to reject the bid since it exceeded the consulting engineer's cost estimate by almost double, actually. The bid was almost double the cost estimate. And speaking with Mr. Calby, he believes that part of the reason for that is that they weren't perhaps given enough time to prepare their bids. And he did speak to others who had picked up bid documents and didn't bid, and they had indicated they would have liked more time. So we're going to go out again taking that into account, and in this case, we have a little extra time to be able to go out to bid again and be able to award the bid. And hopefully, given the time, we'll have more than one bid, and it won't be double the engineer's cost estimate.
Questions? Good. That was
Thank you.
painless.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a discussion of extension of deadline for RFPs for Hudson Street parking garage. As you know, our original bid deadline for the RFPs was December. Because of the holidays, several of the bidders had asked for an extension. We thought that was reasonable, and we did extend it to January 19th. We now have a request from one of the bidders to extend it again to February 9th. They feel in this way they could provide a complete package for us that would meet all of the requirements within the RFP. So I just need to know, I know informally, I've asked the council, I think it's important to, have this discussion in public so that the public understands the reasoning of the village council one way or another. And so I just ask that you discuss that matter now, whether you'd like to extend it one more time to February 9th.
Okay. So I just had a couple of questions first. How many bid packets were picked up?
I think it's, I'll have Mr. Ruttershauser come out. I think he said approximately 23, if I'm correct, but I'll have him come up and give us the actual numbers. And I know some of them were bid agencies, that do it so that they can get it out to their bidders. So there might have been 4 or 5 of them within that number.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Heather's correct. We have approximately 23 plant holders. Of that, approximately 5 or 6 are bid services. Those are entities that pick bid documents up and, for lack of a more decorous term, pimp them out to the consultant community. We don't know how many bidders may actually have the bid documents because we did have it available online. Those individuals who downloaded off the website, sometimes they tell us they have the bid documents and wish to be registered as a plan holder. Yeah, they're all missing.
I know, it's a broken one, but you can have it. I mean, it's ripped.
Hopefully this is better.
It is better.
As I said, as I was saying, prospective bidders that downloaded the documents off the website sometimes will let us know that they are interested in the project to be a registered plan holder. Others may not go to that effort. That's why it's approximately 23. We have had, as Heather said, a request from one prospective bidder seeking a time extension. If the council wishes to grant that time extension request, we will put out an addendum and we will try to notify all the bidders, obviously electronically, and we'll also post it on the website. And hopefully it'll get out to the entire community that's interested in responding.
Okay. And then the next question is, we expect the Walker study?
We'll be discussing it January 31st at the work session.
Okay. Okay, anyone else?
I was just wondering if there's, do you have any kind of way to anticipate how many bids may come back? Like how many people are you feel might be serious, or has anything come back, or has anyone indicated that things are coming back as?
We have not gotten any responses yet. We've had a number of email inquiries asking questions. The bulk of the questions are such that I can answer them without having to prepare an additional addendum, because there's a very fine line between what we can answer as a courtesy, and if anything is more substantive, and the village attorney could weigh in on that, we would be obligated to put out an addendum. There's been a couple of bidders that have been asking questions, so I think there's at least 3 or 4 that are very interested. I anticipate we probably will get about 4 to 6 responses. I'm hoping, certainly. If we get 24 responses, Obviously, there'll be a greater review process by everyone in the village, and going through them and making a selection and deciding.
And no one else has asked, only one has requested an extension.
That is correct.
Okay. Council, you have anything?
I just think that we just move forward. I don't think we need to extend it again. We provided an courtesy over the holidays, understanding that a lot of the offices have been sort of understaffed in that time. But to hold this thing up even more just for the whim of one particular, I mean, we've given everyone ample time to do this. Everybody else got their stuff in on time, and we have one person, one group that couldn't. I just don't see the benefit of, especially because we have such, the overwhelming amount of packets that were picked up. So I think we should just move forward and not grant the extension.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. If there was, if it seemed like there were more requests coming in for more time, then you might feel like, well, perhaps because of the holidays, there was an extended period of understaffing at these offices. But if no one else is really asking, it's just one person, I don't feel like we should hold up the process either for just one bidder.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that we had a full discussion about extending the time, which we did, and then they got a further extension because of the holidays, so I think we just stick with our timing.
Okay. I'm always on the fence on this because I'm fearful that we'll have a missed opportunity, maybe a better product, maybe a lower price, maybe a better build, and we don't really know how many will be returned on the 19th, but on the other hand, by opening up that window of opportunity, you might garner additional that would not have come in by the 19th, but if that's what everyone else is, I'm good either way. I just caution that we might have gotten a better product by allowing that little bit of time. But they had ample opportunity, so we'll just keep moving forward and not do the extension.
Well, thank you, because then I will relay this to the prospective bidder that has made the inquiry tomorrow.
Right. Okay. Great.
Okay. While we're on parking, I just want to mention one thing. There might have been some misunderstanding with the Park Mobile contract. We are going out for RFP. However, what I do want to make everyone aware of is Park Mobile is still in effect till February 28th of this year. And so the new contract would not start until March 1st, and Park Mobile could certainly submit an RFP if they wish to do so. So they're not prohibited from doing that, and depending on the proposals we get, it's possible we may decide to go with them again. So some people thought it ended at the end of last year, December 31st. It does not. It will continue through February 28th. Okay. The next items are under budget, and the first one is award of a second-year contract for maintenance of irrigation systems and water fountains. Last year, the bid was awarded to TANS, Inc., and this is the second year of a 2-year contract, and so they're out of River Edge. So as long as we've had a good experience with them, so we're willing to go for the second year.
Okay. Questions, comments? Moving on.
So how many responses did we get on this?
Last year?
Yep.
I don't know. I can look it up again and get to you. No? I don't recall. The next item is amendment to a contract previously awarded for 2 police vehicles. When we awarded, I'm just looking to see what it was. It was for a state contract for Winter Ford. It was for emergency equipment for 2 new police vehicles, and we awarded it to Winter Ford in September. Actually, the name of the company, installation company, is Emergency Accessories Installation, and there's a state contract vendor for the emergency equipment. So this is just to correct that error and to make sure that it was awarded to the proper party. We have already purchased this equipment, but we could not purchase the emergency equipment because it was to the wrong vendor. Right. So that this is, again, to correct that error.
Okay. Questions, anyone? Okay.
The next one is capital paving budget request. for a bond ordinance, and this would be for $1.97 million worth of paving, which is similar to last year, and then the total bond ordinance would actually be for $2,052,000. This will include minor drainage repairs, the Monte Vista storm drain, curb work, and the resurfacing of North Pleasant Avenue. As a reminder, we did receive an NJDOT grant in the amount of $165,627 for the North Pleasant repaving. We're still working on the selection of the streets, and we're also going to look again once the winter's over to see if any particular street has suffered tremendously, and maybe we'll put that on the list where perhaps it wasn't previously. So we should have the work to be considered probably in a month or two. And this, again, we would like to introduce next week so that we would have that ready for February. The bids could go out and we could award possibly in March or April, which would be great, and then we could get a jump on starting the paving. We did do, I think, over $2 million worth of paving last year, and I think it's a good thing because our infrastructure needs it. And so I think going down this road, and a lot of times also, if we put out the bids earlier in the year, we do get better prices.
Right.
So,
Great.
and a contractor who's more willing to work, sooner rather than later.
Okay. Any questions? That's great.
Okay, the next one is for rock salt, much needed at this time of year. This is through the Bergen County Cooperative Purchasing Program, and this, the price is $56.11 per ton, which is the best price we can get.
I just had is the treated rock salt, is that different than the untreated? Is that more, does anybody know the answer, treated, untreated?
I don't. I can find out for you. Do you know?
You're referencing what's in the doc, because there are two different types.
It identifies in that document, it says untreated rock salt, and then it has treated rock salt. I was just interested in understanding the difference. What was one versus the other?
Well, the untreated, it's raw rock salt. We add sodium, a de-icing solution to the rock salt when we have low temperatures. So like recently with this really cold weather, we added that de-icer, so it became a treated rock salt at that point, but we buy the raw untreated product and then treat it ourselves.
Okay, I guess that's more cost effective?
Yes, than spending the $80.73 per ton for the treated.
Okay,
and we're spending
so we just treat it as needed?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the award of professional engineering services for Phase 1 security improvements at Village Hall. We awarded a contract to Secure Watch 24 in December under a professional services agreement. Actually, they are, it's actually a National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance contract, number 12-06. So it's for the same amount of money, $143,922, the same vendor, again, Secure Watch 24 of Moonachie, New Jersey. It's just instead of being a professional service, it's actually under a cooperative purchasing program.
So just the first time, that first document was just a typo?
Correct.
That's all it was?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, great.
The next one is awarding a contract for General Code Laser Feature Avante software package. This will provide a stable software package that meets the state requirements for Oprah and digital scan media. It's to move ahead, finally, on a project that would provide paperless packets for the council meetings and digital scan documents throughout departments to help in streamlining research, time, and information gathering in the future, which is important for Oprah, because a lot of times we have to go out to the departments and, it takes a long time for them to search through paper records. The total amount of the software package with one-year support is $41,148.50, and it is budgeted for.
So any questions? I'm really excited about this because I think it's something we've been talking about for a long time, and I think it's a great opportunity to save time and staff resources and trees. Oh, and trees, yes, trees.
Definitely. The next one, the mutual aid plan and rapid deployment force, Councilman Voigt wanted to have some input on, so I said I would just briefly talk about it tonight, and I'd put it back on for January 31st. This is an annual resolution that the village does. It's through the Bergen County Police Chiefs Association. It allows police officers from all 70 municipalities in Bergen County to be part of this. They have 2 platoons, so if there were a natural disaster, or if there were a terrorist incident, or if there were a riot, or another type of emergency, true emergency, that they would have the ability, our police chief would have the ability to call and have one of, maybe 80 police officers, if need be, to come here and help us. It's like a mutual aid, like for fire, things like that. As I said, Councilman Voigt had some concerns, so I just wanted to touch on it tonight since it was on the agenda, but we'll put it back on for the 31st, and he can bring his concerns at that time. The next one is a new requirement with submitting our budget to the Division of Local Government Services. This was signed into law on August 7th of 2017. Yep. And this is to ensure that the village's hiring practices comply with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's enforcement guidance, which basically says that how an employer uses criminal history records to select, promote, and retain employees may violate Title VII's prohibition against employment discrimination, and then may also become disparate treatment. And discrimination on the basis of disparate treatment may occur when an employer treats criminal history information differently for different applicants and employees based on their race or national origin. Disparate impact-based discrimination may occur when an employer's neutral policy, in other words, excluding all applicants from employment based on certain criminal conduct, may disproportionately impact some individuals protected under Title VII, and the policy is not job-related and consistent with business necessity. So basically, what this is saying is that the Village Council is aware of this guidance document, that you agree that the village does not discriminate, and that our employment practices are in line with this, which they are. So there will be, as similar to the audit, where you have to sign that you understand this, you'll have to sign an affidavit prior to the, or as the resolution's being adopted, and then there's a resolution. This will then be submitted with the budget, and as I said, this is a requirement this year going forward that we've done this.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Okay, the next one is discussing donations to Parks and Recreation Department for the community center and landscape elements. The Community Center Foundation would like to gift to the Village of Ridgewood various items that they have actually bought through the foundation. This includes things such as sofas, end tables, coffee tables, media console, curtains, rugs, chairs, a lectern, and the painting of the youth lounge. Then, in addition, there are some contributions that have been made by individuals or by organizations. This includes things such as a mini refrigerator, a baby grand piano, a player piano, and a CD jukebox. So this is so that we can officially say that all of these have been accepted by the Village Council, whether it be from the Community Center Foundation or the individuals or groups that have donated them. In addition, we have been offered by Julie Tung, who is the widow of Ed Schwartz, who was Echo Ed. Many of you knew him, a great guy. He was an important member of the Ridgewood Environmental Advisory Committee, and he served as chairman. And so Julie has offered us donations and has had professionally appraised the ornate metal gazebo that sat in their yard, the iron gates, and a sandstone rock pile. She has actually recently sold her Glen Avenue property and would like to be able to donate these to the village and have it out, have it done and over with by, before the end of January. It is certainly a very generous donation. The gazebo is well known to people traveling up and down, I think, Glen Avenue. It's gorgeous, and I think it's a very generous thing for her to do on behalf of the village. So if the council's okay with that donation, we'll also do a resolution next week for that.
So, and we have to make the arrangements, village staff will have to pick it up. And do we have an idea where we would put that gazebo? Has anyone given it any?
At this time, we're not going to make that decision, but certainly the council will be involved in making that decision as to where it will go. We'll probably through our recreation staff, they'll come up with, and Parks and Recreation, come up with some possibilities, and then we can discuss them. Okay.
Any questions? So we're good with that? That's a very generous and great guy.
Definitely.
Miss-
So the state of New Jersey has lowered the action level for lead poisoning investigation, and because of this, it has led to the increase of lead investigation cases. The Bergen County Department of Health Services has received a grant from the state which enables the county to provide lead poisoning services to all 70 municipalities within the county. This agreement is valid for 6 months through June 30th of this year. If the grantee is successful in meeting the goals of the grant requirements, it will likely continue. So the county has drafted a memorandum of understanding agreement for all Bergen County towns. They want it to be signed by the end of this month. And the requirements for Ridgewood is to continue to provide blood lead testing services at our child health clinics, as well as assist with lead inspections if needed. Dawn Citrullo, our director of the health department, is actually, she does have that certification. Also, we have a memorandum of understanding for nursing services only with the Patterson Health Department for lead cases, which was originally created when the jurisdiction was under Fairlawn's health officer. We will continue this agreement as a requirement to close out the existing lead cases. I spoke with Dawn Citrullo today, and she indicated actually she has 2 new lead cases based on this new law because of the lower levels that are now being detected.
Okay. Any questions? No?
Okay. The next item is encroachment enclosure for a restaurant entrance. This gives a, you can see a picture of it. This is typical in New York City. You see a lot of these kind of enclosures during the winter months. This is a request actually from the Steel Wheel Tavern. The spec committee from the planning board said that they should go to the council.
So, so just for everyone's information, the Site Plan Exemption Committee, which is a committee of the planning board, sent it over to us as an encroachment item, an encroachment agreement, and so the canvas vestibule is as shown in the images.
Right. I mean, the concern always is that this could set a precedent. And, although one restaurant may have enough sidewalk area to allow for this vestibule, others may not. And it's whether you want to allow this type of encroachment or not. It's the council's decision.
Let me just add in on that. It usually is the decision, this would be basically an amendment to a site plan. So it's usually the decision of the planning board to decide whether or not an encroachment should be granted. The agreement thereafter is done with the town, with the village, to decide to enter into the agreement with that property owner. So we don't have really the authority to grant or deny this. We can certainly make a recommendation back to the planning board, but we don't have the ability to grant or deny it.
So it actually never went to the planning board, and I
Okay.
wasn't at I'm on spec, but I wasn't at that particular meeting where this was sent back. So I agree. I think it should go to the planning board first.
I just don't,
Yeah.
somebody could challenge it, we don't have the authority, and I think that would be really the issue. We don't have
Right.
planning authority. So.
Right. Okay. And then I think the next question is, given that the type of encroachment, because they had, Steel Wheel had to come before Historic Preservation Commission for signage, and then we gave an encroachment agreement on the gooseneck lights, which we did here. So I would also have to think that this would require that a meeting, a review at HPC as well.
Probably HPC.
Yeah.
And I would just suggest that we not discuss the merits of it right now,
Right.
because otherwise we'd have to give notice to the applicant, and so we should just kick it
Pass
back.
it on.
Okay. Moving forward.
The next one is the continuation of the suspension of ordinance for certain illuminated signs. The planning board subcommittee has not yet provided their report to us, so we will have to continue the hearing till February. In the meantime, though, I just wanted to double check. We only relaxed the enforcement through December 31st. Do you think, Mr. Rogers, we should have another resolution to continue it until such time as the council just makes a decision?
I think that would be fine.
Okay, so we'll do a resolution just to continue it. It may be that there are so many changes to the ordinance based on whatever comes forward that we may have to defeat the current ordinance and introduce a new one. And if that's the case, then we wouldn't adopt till April and be effective sometime in May probably. So it may have to be extended until May. I just don't want a situation where, you know, a current business has one of these signs and then gets a ticket from our code enforcement officer because December 31st is come and gone.
So, and that's actually how we started this whole
Correct.
Exercise.
Correct.
So I think there were 2 summonses issued, so we want to avoid that. I anticipate that the planning board will likely have some response by February, early February. So I think we should extend it into the end of May. That would be-
Okay.
Or even June,
Okay.
yeah,
So,
I'm good with
like
that.
June 1st?
June 1st would be good.
Okay. So we'll do a resolution then next week for that. Okay. The next is actually, I'll have Mr. Rooney come up. It's about the municipal charitable deductions. This is because of the change in the tax code and possibilities of how we might be able to help our residents going forward with that.
Good evening. So Representative Josh Gottheimer and Governor-elect Phil Murphy have proposed the establishment of a charitable trust by each municipality in the state of New Jersey. This would allow taxpayers to establish, when they go to pay their taxes, to declare how they want that money to be put into trust. So if the trust is established and they say we want all of our taxes to go into the trust, conceptually, they'd be allowed to take that as a charitable deduction on their tax return, federal tax return. There are complexities that go with this. One is it would require that the federal government approve that. 2, it would require that the state of New Jersey approve the methodology and how the transactions would occur, because right now we're governed by state law as to how we collect our taxes, how we levy our taxes, and how we account for them as they're being paid. It's a concept that, if it's approved, we would definitely be on board with, to allow our residents to get that deduction, which now they won't have based upon the new tax law, federal tax law. I guess we're looking to discuss and see whether council would be in favor of it, assuming all the logistics are in place to allow it to occur, and support this position.
Yeah, so just a little bit of added information. We did a conference call with the congressman on late Friday, and then he supplied some follow-up information, which I hope everybody has. And that charitable donation, somebody could say, well, I'm going to make this donation to the school tax or to this tax or that, but even though you're making that charitable donation, you're still obligated to your actual property tax bill. So you couldn't just say, I want to take 100% of my property tax bill and put it towards school, and then school gets all that money. You still have an obligation to pay that property tax. So you could take 100% of it, but the only piece of it that would be applied to your property tax bill on that would be how much you owe to the school property tax. The reason we asked to put it on the agenda was in the event that this does happen at some point, we would want to have some structure in place to accept payments, and our understanding is we would have to do that by ordinance. So I don't know if Matt wants to speak to it a little further.
I think everybody, I don't know if everybody is aware, but every municipality has the authority to present real estate taxes, and the obligation for that placed on its residents and property owners is by legislative enactment. We don't have the authority to decide one way or the other how it's done or where it's done. So everything's got to be handled through the state first. And in this case, because we're talking about a charitable deduction, there has to be probably has to be some federal legislation as well. It's hard to tell right now how it's all going to turn out, but I think what we had discussed is that we wanted to start the conversation, just see where, pay attention to it, follow it all at all times, so that we're on top of it, because as we know, it takes us about a month and a half to 2 months to adopt an ordinance to allow certain things to happen. We don't know whether or not it's really going to be a charitable trust. We don't know which way it might come about, but at the same time, we're following it. I think one of the reasons why we're discussing it tonight is to make sure that everyone on the council understands what the issue is, and I guess get a feel for whether or not everybody's in favor of looking at this, with a lot of attention to make sure that we do the right thing for the residents and the taxpayers in Ridgewood, and that we follow it so that we can properly place ourselves in line so that when it does come about, if it does come about, that people can go right to it and utilize it. Because we're talking about 2018 property taxes,
Right.
And we're in 2018, so it's other people have to get moving before us, but we still want to make sure that we're on top of it at all times.
Okay. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I think I applaud the effort, and I really hope that it actually passes. And having the readiness to be able to deal with it at the time, I think it's important. This goes beyond 2018. I think, in the next couple of years, we're going to see a strain on our own budget due to the fact that the expectation is that property values will go down by, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10%, if not more. So anything that we can do now to mitigate the impact of that, I think it's wise. So fingers crossed.
Just so everybody knows, and we're not going to panic, that, we've had downturns in the economy before, particularly in 2008. The revenue stream stays the same because it gets mostly adjusted with the tax rate. But property values may be impacted, and certainly the quality of life with the property values in this town and all those things that people value by living in this town are certainly all under scrutiny at that point in time and may get affected, so you want to make sure that you're ahead of it.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I don't know if it's going to pass the federal government and the IRS and possibly courts and all these hurdles and things that they're going to have to go through and challenges, but if it does pass, I'd be all for it, because if not all of our residents pay more than $10,000 a year in taxes, and if your property tax deduction is capped at $10,000, then, it leaves a lot of people not being able to deduct, quarter, half, maybe more, a lot more in some cases of their property taxes. So I think we should definitely stay on top of it, and if it does pass all these hurdles, offer it to our residents as an option.
Yeah, I think we should aggressively pursue it just in case. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes, okay. So I have too many questions. First of all, we're not tax advisors, so
Right.
I don't think the council should be giving tax advice to anybody. I think everybody should talk to their own tax advisor to see how they're going to be impacted. With the recent ability to prepay taxes, only about 25% of the individuals or the properties did that pre-tax, which means 75% of them didn't. That could mean that they don't have the ability, so we would be creating an inequality for people that pay their taxes through an escrow account, perhaps. So we'd have to look into that, because we can't, our job is just to collect the taxes. It's not, it's not our job to determine how people are paying their taxes. So that's a big concern for me. The other thing is, if properties do, excuse me, if property values do decrease, then that's going to have an additional impact on their personal taxes again, because they're going to have different write-offs on their income tax return. And again, it goes back to we're not giving tax advice or income tax advice, I should say. So I have some major concerns about how it's being laid out. The other concern I have is the word charity. We're not a charity, we're a municipality. And to be setting something up as a charity, whether we like the tax law or not, I feel it's a little disingenuous. That's my personal opinion. So if we could structure our taxes the way that Matt was talking, to have a benefit to the residents or the taxpayers, then that's one thing. But to set it up as a loophole to do an end run is just, in my opinion, not smart on our part.
Well, it's really not, that part is not going to be us anyway. That's all going to be on the state and the federal government. So we don't get to choose, we're not going to declare it. I think what we're talking about really is just taking an aggressive look, always pay attention to it, and just see where they're going, and make sure we're positioned well enough that if the state legislature and the federal government decide that this opportunity is going to come around, we're ready to provide that mechanism that allows us to do that. So, but they're the ones who tell us whether or not we're going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think in California, was it the California Excellence Fund? So they didn't define it necessarily as a charity. Look, we're not tax advisors. I think we're pretty clear on that. We're just determining what the mechanism is to accept a payment and whether or not we give our residents tools in the toolbox to maximize. If they take deductions and they consult with a tax advisor, then that's their prerogative. They do it at their own, at their own risk, their own benefit or burden, either way. But at least we're only supplying the mechanism that if somebody chooses to take that as a deduction, they have that option.
Right,
in
but
that
the
manner.
mechanism would have to be fair to everybody. It wouldn't be for those that can pay their taxes up front and those that can't. So we can't create an inequality.
We're not going to, somebody's going to tell us what the mechanism is. We're not going to be able to decide ourselves, so.
But that inequality, what you're describing, actually has existed all along, because people have always come in and prepaid their property taxes, and they're able to do so in cash, and they're able to take that full deduction. So we had people, so that inequality that you're describing happens anyway, because whether we like it or not, there are people of different means. It's... Okay, so we'll look at that, and we'll see how we would want to organize it and whether or not it works.
Okay. So the next item is under operations. This is a discussion of the Burbio calendar app. As you recall, in December, we had a presentation on this app. It highlights events in the community and puts them on the calendars of users of the app. It's free of charge because the income comes from the advertisers. Businesses can also advertise discounts or certain promotions. Also, we can display garbage or leaf pickup, they said. We could also give information about the schools. So the calendar starts with the school, library, and government events and is announced in the local press. Residents and nonprofit groups would be sent an email announcing the existence of it and inviting them to sign up for free. And then an icon could be put on the village website. So we left it with, we would discuss it further. So my question is, at this time, does the village council wish to move forward with this app? Or I just need some guidance as to what you want to do.
I mean, I actually have, I like the app. I think it was a great presentation. The fact that it's at no cost to the village, I think, is a plus. My question would be if we expand sort of, the reach of the app to include more community events that are not necessarily related to the village. So for example, if there's anything going on in the downtown that's being sponsored by either the Guild or the Chamber, things of the sort, would that also be included as part of the sort of promotion of events that are happening with zero cost to the village or to whoever's promoting it?
Yeah, actually, you did ask that question previously, and it did say that the chamber or the guild would be free of charge.
Yeah, okay.
Is what if there were their events, so.
So first, I just want to point out that the Burbio just emailed yesterday, and they launched their Android app. So just in case anyone is interested, it's now on Android. So you actually choose, so you can go to the Guild or Chamber website, just like you could go to the Board of Ed, you could go to Somerville, you could go to Willard, you could go to the middle school, high school, anywhere you want to go, you can actually just click on those and add those to your calendar. You can have them following or not following, so you pick and choose, but we're promoting it from our end, and I think it's really it's highly organized, and I think it, for many people, resolves an issue of trying to follow different websites and different calendars because it just drops it all in on one location. So,
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so maybe we'll just do a resolution just to say the council's in agreement that we
Yep.
move forward, and then we'll go from there.
put the button up on the website, and we're good to go, and then we'll
Right.
promote. Very good.
Okay, the next item is the major soil permit for Dayton, Ridgewood Dayton, which is 100 to 152 South Broad Street. I know there was some concerns because of the fact that the trucking route for this soil removal was down South Broad Street exclusively. The new resolution, which has been given to the council to review, directs the trucks to both South Broad Street and Prospect Street. There is a concern with the speed table on South Broad Street and the trucks going over it and then, coming off of it because they're heavy trucks and the rear wheels, bouncing possibly some of the foundations of some of the homes. And so I spoke with Mr. Ruthershauser earlier, and I indicated that that was a concern, and he indicated, well, we could require the applicant to remove the speed table temporarily during this time frame and then replace it at the end. So, or the applicant could choose to go down Prospect, which is a more wider road, a more heavily traveled road. And so, I don't know, Mr. Ruthershauser, did you want to give any other input possibly? It also, just so you know, and as a reminder, it says that they have to be aware of any events going on at the churches, weddings, funerals, things like that, that it'll only be permitted between the hours of 8:30 and 5:30, Monday through Friday. None shall be permitted in any of the village's designated school zones during the start of school or school dismissal. No trucking on Hudson Street, East Ridgewood Avenue, or Broad Street, East Ridgewood Avenue between Broad Street and Maple Avenue. Go ahead.
Can I just ask, before you start, can I just ask, how many truckloads did that come out to?
I think the last time we discussed it, it was in the neighborhood of about 400. While that sounds like a large quantity, that's for the duration of the project. Project will probably take a year or so at least to construct. I know they're going to want to start doing some of the environmental remediation relatively shortly. And, as Heather said, the concern of vibration from the speed table, I think, can be ameliorated if they want to use that route by requiring the applicant to remove the speed table and then reconstruct it upon the completion of trucking activities.
Then when so if it's 400 truckloads, it's actually 800 truck trips?
Yes, because it come in empty and leave, say, with a load of material. It's also, everybody else has to remember that during the construction, there'll be truckloads of concrete, building materials, lumber, steel, everything, all the ingredients to build the project will also have to be delivered, as will waste generated be removed from the site.
Okay.
So 16 truck trips per week, not too bad, but do we have any sort of obligation or requirement to kind of let in Glen Rock on the fact that we're going to dump in these trucks out of Broad Street into Glen Rock? Is there an issue with that? Is that for them to figure out with Glen Rock?
I'm going to defer.
Yeah, there's no legal obligation, but we certainly can, if you wanted to, let them know. I mean, that
I
would.
think it'd be nice. Yeah.
I think I'm going to
Can't be a
defer that to the
requirement.
police department, because, I mean, this whole effort, the permit requires coordination between engineering and the police department. I'll ask the police department to reach out to their colleagues in Glen Rock to give them a heads up, as you say, as a courtesy.
Just if somebody's, I mean, Prospect, in my mind, is much wider. Do we know what the width of both of those streets are, one versus?
I don't have them off the top of my head. I knew Prospect is wider. There is parking up near the CBD area. I think the paved curb-to-curb width is probably in the range of, 50 feet or so, or more.
And Broad is significantly,
Broad is tighter. The houses are also a little bit more closer to the right-of-way limit line as opposed to houses on Prospect Street.
and then where would we more likely see children as pedestrians on one versus the other?
We have, it's hard to say. There is, I think, the Quakers have a daycare center right off of South Broad. There are activities at AME Zion, Mount Bethel Baptist. That's why, as Heather mentioned, we do have language that if there are events at those places, we're requesting that trucks don't run for that very concern. On Prospect Street, we do have a group home. Those are a little bit older individuals, not, under probably over the age of 14 or so. We also want to work with the police department as to if there are any walking routes that kids are going to go to school.
So just in order to do this in the most equitable way, would it be possible to just say full loads, take Prospect, and then reroute on the return trip empty back on Broad, and this way you kind of split that and don't burden one road as opposed to the other?
That can be done. That certainly could be in the discussions we have with the contractors and the developers, because we do need trucking routes from them. Right now, we're surmising that those are the primary routes. We don't know what they're planning. We certainly will find out what they're planning, because that's part of the process with the resolution conditions.
So if it's Prospect, for example, then how do we get there? Because we went a wider road, but I don't know of any.
Just Dayton.
Which one?
Dayton.
Dayton?
Yes.
What, so through Passaic Street?
If they came up, say they came to the site or leaving the site, they'd have to go down Passaic.
Passaic, right. Okay.
But again, to the mayor's point, we have to look at that carefully, because we have the school right across on the south side of Mount Carmel.
Right.
And we have to see how that place is, because they do have that school we have observed has a pretty busy inflow in the morning of small school buses and commuter-type vans to bring their students there. So obviously during that time, we don't want trucks on that street.
And that's a really narrow street.
That is true.
That's
You're
really
correct, because it has parking.
And then there's a lot of activities. So would it make sense to say, I mean, do we have to, in the resolution, do we want to get into the real specifics where we say full loads down, because to your point, full loads down Broad, because then they just have to make the right?
Yeah, but we don't know where they're going.
Right.
Again,
We don't know where
No, I
they're dumping.
understand, no, I
Ms. Walsh,
understand.
we don't, once they go down Broad, we don't know if they're going to go straight across Ackerman, they're going to make a left, they may make a right. Again, that's to be determined.
Yeah, but does it really matter, because they're both heading the same?
Because they could make a right-hand turn, try to go under the trestle, come back up by Ackerman or Doremus, and turn right and go.
Yeah,
Can they go under the trestle?
That's a pretty decent clearance trestle.
Yeah.
And to Ms. Walsh's point, if they go up Ackerman after the tennis club, after Doremus, gets very, very, very tight. That's almost like, I think, a 24-foot wide roadway as it goes up to Godwin. And then at Godwin, the
presumption would be they'd make a left heading west.
Yeah, we don't know where they're dumping, that's the problem. So their route to dump,
That's part of what we need to get back from the developer.
right,
And that's, like I said, that's a condition in the permit that they have to give us our trucking routes. The Police Traffic Control Bureau will vet them, particularly with the understanding of what activities go on related to your concern, school children.
And the concern, because I wouldn't want to see all the trucks on one street. I think that, you know, everybody has to kind of share that burden. So if half go, you know, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I just think that as best we can achieve that, I mean, we should try to
Yes.
at least exact that.
I think the way the resolution is written now is that it's left in the discretion of or it has to meet the approval of the engineer and the chief of police, excuse me. We're not going to be able to determine it tonight, but we can't hold up the resolution for that. I think with Chris's assistance, if there is concerns about that route and where it's going to go, we can just ask him to report back to us once a route is determined,
Right.
so that we can understand exactly what's going. And if we have any comments on it, we can go back to him with that.
Okay, fair.
And these are our only real options, these two directions, right? Because otherwise you're putting them through the central business district, and
The
that would
only
be a
other,
disaster.
I absolutely do not want trucks on East Ridgewood Avenue.
Right.
That's the last thing in the world. The only other routing would be onto Broad, cross East Ridgewood, go on to North Broad, and take Franklin, and at the Franklin intersection, most likely make a right turn heading down towards Maple. Again, that's not an optimum area for this type of truck traffic.
Right, yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Still good. So why don't we move forward and then once we have the route established, we can come back to council and at least let us, you know.
Once the trucking routes are established, I've reviewed them, or my department's reviewed them, and the police department has reviewed them, we'll make those materials available to the council.
Sounds good.
Did you want to put in the resolution about the speed table? The removal of it if they do go down Broad?
I don't think that's necessary, because I think that's something that gets worked out normally with the engineer and how they work out their,
Well, I would recommend that it is a condition of the resolution,
All right.
because if that's the direction they want to go, and they do remove it for their convenience, I certainly would want it to be reestablished as the village has had it.
oh, because you basically have an agreement with them once you determine what the route is, as to where they're going to go. So the enforcement or enforceability of that is the same as the table. So, I mean, either they do it or they don't. If they don't do it, then they violate the permit. We can, you know, invalidate the permit if there's a violation of it, so.
That's true. I just felt, you know, in discussion with Heather, that if we had it as a condition, it's right up front.
It's up to the council, certainly not a problem.
So at the worst case scenario though, that speed bump, I mean, it's kind of like an important traffic safety installation.
It would be obviously temporary during this time frame, and then it would be restored once it was done. I think the concerns are for the residents in that area, that as those loaded trucks come off of the speed table, the back wheels apparently bump.
No, I get
And-
that. I think I'm asking, what was the duration of just these trucks? But then the speed bump would still be out when the construction material is coming in, right?
Guys, you got to remember that you're also going to have to work on routes for KS Broad
Right.
and for Chestnut. Well, Chestnut Village may not as bad, but KS Broad is really going to be another one you're going to have to worry about. So
And-
KS Broad Chestnut has other options, but KS Broad right now.
Also, for the enclave at 257 East Ridgewood.
I know,
that's
we're
another-
talking about options up at the upper end of the town, up the upper end of the CBD, and that's really the two right there that are going to be problematic. So it may be that Broad Street utilization is the optimum for a lot of things, but we'll hopefully see how that all works. They could be running at the same time.
And also to, I think, the deputy mayor's point, and yours, Mayor, the Dayton project is going to have the traffic generally go towards the south. Then there's also the Ken Smith site. Their principal traffic route is going to be Franklin. There's no other place we really want to send them. So the Franklin corridor is not going to be unscathed in terms of receiving some truck traffic.
All right.
So the next discussion item is the report of the independent arborist for the sycamore tree at Graden Pool. We did have, as you know, our arborist look at that tree and indicate that he felt that it should probably be removed because it was hollow in certain parts. We hired an independent arborist. His name is Ewain Kahili. He's the owner of Kahili's Horticultural Services out of Dumont, New Jersey. I just want to give you a little bit of his background. He is the manager of the Lionel Goldfrank III Institutional Mapping Department and the site historian for the New York Botanical Garden. He's been the manager of the Arboretum and Grounds for the New York Botanical Garden, the lead arborist at the New York Botanical Garden, forest manager in Millbrook, New York, and he's also had several symposium. He's done full-time educational programs. Has several professional affiliations. He's been the recipient of awards and citations. He teaches at the New York Botanical Gardens, as well as lectures and workshops in various locations throughout the tri-state area. And he also has several publications that he has participated in or been a general consultant on. So I think his resume is quite impressive. And Councilman Seaton, I know, presented briefly to the Shade Tree Commission the information that he provided, and so he's going to present what the arborist has said.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, we went over this report last night at the Shade Tree Commission meeting, and if you look at it, it's a 14-page report, and there's a lot of information in there, and they actually did a lot to the tree. So they have this device called a tomograph that you take 10 locations 6 inches up from the base of the tree and put in these spikes, and then you, I guess, hit these spikes and they start to send sound waves through the tree, and then they have sensors that use those sound waves to basically, it's like sonar, so you can map the inside of the tree. So structurally, for the trees can be hollow and still be structurally sound. The size of this tree in this case would require about 9 inches or so of good, living wood all the way around to be structurally sound. In this instance, through the tomograph, they discovered that at one point at the base, on the north end of the tree, it's 5.5 to 6 inches thick, and on the southeast side, it's 4.5 inches thick, and it leans 6 degrees towards the south and southeast. So they determined that it's definitely going to fall. It's going to fall that way towards Linwood Avenue, where all the kids and parents on the beach at Graden, and I think where they have the swimming lessons for younger kids are right there in that shallow end. So, I mean, the recommendation in this was, there were 2 recommendations. One is to remove it, which is the final determination they made. Another suggestion was you could significantly trim back the crown, but that would require years of, every year somebody like a specialized arborist would have to come in and know exactly what to cut and where to cut, and sometimes you have to cut more, and sometimes you have to let the tree regenerate and cut less. But that won't save the tree, and it won't make it any more structurally sound. So given the location where it is and the fact that so many people are around that tree, their final recommendation is to remove it, unfortunately. But I mean, there's really nothing that you could do to save it.
Questions, anyone? All right, I just, go ahead, Brenda.
I mean, I don't have any questions. I think that you can always remove the tree, but if we did the crown reduction, we could see what happened maybe in a year and see, the possibilities, so.
But it wouldn't, and at the end of the report, it says it wouldn't save the tree. And again, you have what they like to call targets that are really under, the impact area of where this thing would come down, and because of its size and the leader roots also going into the ground immediately, the 2 biggest roots, they're hollow, at least 18 inches deep. And some of the bigger branches are hollow. The void in the middle is almost 13 feet. It goes all the way up to where the crown begins and down into the roots. I went there 2 or 3 times and stuck my head in the void, and you could see the rotted wood all in the root system below where the grade level is. So, I mean, as much as I'd like to save the tree, I mean, I think it would be kind of negligent for us to keep it there, and then God forbid it comes down and seriously injures somebody, you know.
If I can, just from that negligent issue that Mike just brought up, I haven't been a part of this conversation and the investigation on this at all, but I can tell you from a liability standpoint, once you have arborists, and we're aware of them, that say that the tree is dying and it creates a danger, should be taken down, if anything was ever to happen, the liability would be plainly on us. The Tort Claims Act would no longer be applicable because we would have been aware of the dangerous condition, which is the defense for most of the times when we get sued on these different types of condition injuries. So just from that alone, I mean, it's been a mainstay, it's been a beautiful tree, but now with those reports and that information, it'd be, I mean, almost impossible. It would be impossible to defend.
I mean, I've seen, an incident where a tree in a starry, clear, beautiful night, absolute still, no wind at all, and a tree just fell, and that happened. So I think it would be irresponsible of us to leave it, or even to, the reduction on the crown doesn't mean you reduce the likelihood that it would fall. It just means that you've tried to save it. I do think that we should have a plan in place as to, I think that Marcia said earlier, whether or not we have somebody that would make pieces from it, or I know that there was some discussion about, finishing it, coating it, and doing, part of the bark as an installation downstairs or in Village Hall. So I think that we should have an idea of what we would want to do with this and be prepared so that somebody doesn't come in, chop it up, and burn it.
Right.
So I think that we should at least know too what that's going to end up. But I think we have an obligation to ensure safety first and foremost. But it certainly has garnered a tremendous amount of attention, so, all right? So we're good. We're going to have to take it down. What do we look like in terms of, how do we, plan as to what somebody might want to do with this? I know there are people actually asked if we could slice it and just have a piece of it. And I don't know if that's something anybody's interested in. I don't know if anybody has any other ideas about that. No?
I have to store it somewhere until we could get it to a person to work it or do something with it, so it's,
I just want to make sure everybody wants
store
to
some
do
chunks
that.
of wood.
I still think there's, I think I shared some photographs with you about this artwork, calls it disjointed tree. And an artist basically took a tree that was hollowed out, lined the inside with, I think it was tin, it's kind of reflective material. And the tree is kind of sliced in sections, about 2 feet tall, and separated. There's empty space in between. It's suspended through cables. I think that would be a wonderful thing to put in the entrance here to Village Hall, because we have the vertical space to do it. And the tree's already hollowed out, so it's, it's making the, but it's, I can send some pictures around, but it's a beautiful piece of artwork, and there's 3 lights that are shining from the floor up. And because of the tin lining on the inside, it creates a pretty beautiful, actually, visual effect.
So I guess we'll get the tree down and everybody can send in their ideas, and if anybody out in the world has ideas, send them in.
Please send them to us.
Okay, well, good.
Okay. The next one is the improvement to Kings Pond Park. The Bergen County Chosen Freeholders granted final approval to a Bergen County Trust Fund grant award of $34,000 to Ridgewood for Park Improvement Project on June 28th of 2017. This is a 50/50 matching grant. Ridgewood is responsible to match the grant with at least $34,000. It's to enhance a conservation area known as Kings Pond, located in the southwestern section of Ridgewood on Lakeview Drive. The project would help to delineate the official park property with simple fencing or shrubbery, 20 to 25 parking spaces, and create an ADA accessible path from the parking lot to the water's edge. Mr. Radisazar has handed out a full-size plan. You had a smaller plan attached to your memo. When it was first presented to the council, there was concern about the invasive plants, basically the Japanese knotweed. We have done the treatment. I believe there's one more treatment coming up this spring. In addition, there was a request to snag the pond. We cannot use this grant money for that purpose. In the original plan, there was a request for benches to support the passive enjoyment of the park. With a limited budget, it's recommended that benches be funded through other means, perhaps some memorial benches. Trails could also be a component that could be provided by volunteers or possibly by an Eagle Scout project or a Girl Scout Gold Award project. And this has been done in other Ridgewood parklands, most notably Habernickel Park actually has had a lot of it. So at this point, we're going to discuss this, and we do need a resolution to accept the grant, but I think we need to delineate exactly, this is what our recommendation is from the Parks and Recreation Department, along with engineering who helped to create the plan. And again, as you can see, there's a parking area, about 20 to 25 spaces. There's a stone dust path that goes along the water's edge, and part of that will be ADA accessible from the parking lot. And then some kind of shrubbery type fence, which would kind of delineate this area as a park, as opposed to, you know, a chain link fence or some other kind of fence. It would be more natural. Obviously, we could also, if we wish to, we could do phases of this, you know, maybe do other things and apply for future grants for this type of work. But with the amount of grant money we received, this is probably the best use of the money in order to delineate the park area and to provide for parking as well as ADA accessibility.
So anyone?
No, I see a gazebo in the plan here.
Well, yeah.
Just received a generous donation.
Already have a gazebo.
Yeah, that's not part of this, actually. It was just put in there as a possible future. The same thing, there's a proposed dock that, again, might be for the future, if that's something the council would like to do. But this is, as I said, this grant itself would just cover probably what I've just discussed.
I just have a couple questions. On the line of shrubbery, which are we suggesting that that could be either shrubbery or the fence?
What we propose along Lakeview Drive, we propose several things. One, that area does not have any curb at the edge of the road. We're proposing to put in curb as part of our capital paving project to better establish the road edge and set back from that a hedge to act as a fence, but not a chain link fence.
Okay.
Or rail fence or whatever.
So I thought the original fence concept was because from the compost facility, the seeds spread, and that's how all the knotweed. So I thought that there was like
There was some consideration for that. Unfortunately, as Heather mentioned, the funding allotted is not as much as we would like.
Right.
We do show some plantings on the southern boundary of, say, lot number 334 and the compost facility. That's where we would need to put some kind of vegetative barrier to possibly assist in reducing the migration of those spores. However, the general prevailing wind direction in this area is from the west and northwest.
Which means that the spores are going to go onto the area near the water, and they're airborne. Yeah. So you wouldn't ever have a high enough fence to stop them from completely going.
If the intent, as Heather said, is the intent was to capture or mitigate the Japanese knotweed or invasive species spores, we may be looking at quite a large barrier.
I just remember that was the discussion, that's all. It was, right? That was.
It was a discussion,
it was
and
a discussion.
We looked at the request, and we don't see how we can satisfy it in a cost-efficient manner with the constraints of the grant.
It's good. I'm good with that. I just was a question.
That's okay.
Okay. So, anyone?
Yeah, it's, how many parking spaces are there now?
Got about 6 or 7 parking spaces. They are, part of them, some of them are used by the staff that operate the compost facility. Some of them are used by residents. One of the reasons we're recommending a curb along Lakeview Drive, we have seen that residents park sometimes a little too much onto the grass area, and then it gets a little bit muddy. With putting in a curb that more defines the roadway, we're also widening the roadway a little bit. We do know that Lakeview Drive is our primary and only way to get into the compost facility, and we do have a lot of truck traffic there. So we feel that if we widen the road a little bit, put a curb, it'll better define it, and hopefully the residents will find it safer.
And do you think there's a need for 25 parking spaces there?
We had looked at in the grant, I think we had even had a greater parking space count. We've reduced that a little bit to make it fit with what you see before you. If this proves to be more popular than we're currently envisioning, it's easy enough for us to increase the parking space count because it's basically head in off of the street.
And we're not looking just today, but also to the future. So if this becomes more developed, it's good to have that extra parking spaces. I think the grant actually was 34 parking spaces, believe it or not. So, you know, if we did 20, that would probably satisfy current and, you know, hopefully at least some of the future use.
And I know there's been a lot of discussion on that this is a underutilized natural area of the village. That is correct, and the thought is if we provide parking, a project like this may bring more public interest to go see what there is. The trails that go along the east side of the river go down and further along the Goffle Brook, and it can extend quite far south also around the compost facility.
Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
No, I agree with the parking, and I think it's going to be beautiful. I think we've really made such a great commitment to Kings, and that this could become quite popular.
We hope so.
I hope so. I hope so. It's beautiful, so I agree. So,
So we're okay to do the resolution for next week with this plan in mind?
we're excited. This is great. This is good.
You made it, Councilman Hache mentioned the gazebo. We just put some ideas in for what can be done. You are correct, we're not proposing a gazebo at this point, but if down the road it proves popular enough and there's an interest for it, this is one example of how it could be situated.
You know, it's interesting though, but when you think like of a really natural environment, and I think the beauty of Kings is that it doesn't have that structure. So it almost seems like it doesn't really fit there to me. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like just a nature place.
You're correct, and from that perspective, you're absolutely correct, because that's also one of the reasons why we went with a rock flower walking path rather than a paved or concrete surface, because the feeling there is, while it may need a little bit of dressing once in a while with a rake, it'll still provide an access way for somebody in a wheelchair, but it won't be that hard of a surface, hardscape surface.
Right. Okay. Good. We're good. It's great. Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is a review of next week's agenda. We have proclamations for Jamboree Days, recognition of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Also, we've had a request from Super Science Saturday. It's the 30th anniversary, and they'd like to get it onto the January proclamations. It's usually on in February because of the fact they'd like to use it for advertising purposes. So if that's okay, we'll add that as well. Okay. And then we have some swearing in of our new police officers who graduated the academy in December. So that's exciting. And then ordinances, we have for Ridgewood Water, we have the introduction of the bond ordinance for the car GAC treatment system, as previously discussed. Resolutions for Ridgewood Water, awarding contract under state contract, chlorine analyzers and supplies, awarding a professional services contract for public policy consultant, authorizing a change order for the Booster Transfer Station improvements, rejecting the bid for Cedar Hill rehabilitation, and awarding a contract for Cedar Hill rehabilitation, rejecting the bid for the 2018 well improvements, and then authorizing temporary water capital budget, which is required for the bond ordinance. Under introduction of ordinances, we have the bond ordinance for the paving. We have public hearings on ordinances for amending the white collar, blue collar, management salary ordinances, amending Chapter 265 vehicles and traffic, CBD employee parking for Cottage Place lot, amending Chapter 265 for vehicles and traffic, prohibiting the overweight and overlength vehicles on Glenwood Road. As a reminder, that enforcement period has begun. That begins January 1st and goes for 6 months. So we are hopeful that our residents will continue to obey the proper laws in that area and not make U-turns on the tracks, because both the Borough of Hohokus as well as New Jersey Transit themselves will be monitoring, and NJDOT will be monitoring that area and will be making their own recommendations based on what they see. The other one, the continued public hearing will be for amending Chapter 190 for land use and development for the illuminated interior signs, which again will await for the planning board's report in February. Resolutions authorizing tax assessor, tax collector to file appeals and/or settlement stipulations. That's an annual resolution. We are approving the renewal of a liquor license for Rocco Berardi. We did not do this back in June because he needed a special ruling from the director of ABC. That has come through, and so now we can renew it. My understanding is that this license will most likely be sold, so shortly we'll be having a transfer of this liquor license. Award of contract for maintenance of irrigation systems and water fountains, award contract under county contract for rock salt, award contract under cooperative purchasing agreement for Phase 1 security improvements at Village Hall, amendment to award of contract, emergency equipment for 2 police vehicles, accept donations for the community center, accept donations for landscape elements, approve continued participation in childhood lead exposure prevention project, approve major soil moving permit, accepting the open space grant, improvements at Kings Pond Park, authorizing temporary capital budget, again, that's a requirement for the bond ordinance, appointing registrar of vital statistics, which we're going to discuss in a closed session, also extending the relaxation of certain illuminated signs in the CBD, relaxation of enforcement for certain illuminated signs, which will, as we discussed, go to June 1st. The compliance with the federal civil rights requirements, which we discussed, approving, awarding a both of those I have, and also awarding a contract for document management system. Did you want any of those resolutions off of the consent agenda?
No, we're good.
Okay, thanks. So the next item, I believe, is the manager's report. First, I'd like to thank the employees of the finance department who collected and processed over $21 million in 2018 tax prepayments from 3,500 property owners in the last 10 days, approximately, of last year. I also want to thank all of the snow removal crews who have done a great job between plowing, shoveling, and salting during the snow and ice events. We are really blessed, and they did a great job, and thank you to the residents who happened to send an email or a phone call just telling us what a great job they did, especially this past snowstorm. We were down to blacktop, and it was very safe. I do want to remind everyone that during snow events, you should bring your garbage cans to the end of your driveways, and you should continue to do so until you have a clear pathway to your garbage cans, which is free of ice and snow. So as long as you do have that clear pathway, it's fine to leave them where you normally leave them. However, if you don't, then please bring them to the end of your driveway. Our 2018 parking permit sales, so far we've sold 193 of the 210 premium hang tags, which allows people to park, residents to park in any lot. The regular hang tags are 121. Park and ride hang tags, we've sold 11. Non-resident hang tags, we've sold 2. CBD stickers, we've issued 48 of them. We have hang tags for the CBD for January, we have 20, for February we have 14, and for March we have 3. Our CBD stickers are not as high as they were this time last year, so, you know, we'll try to get that information out to the Chamber and the Guild again to remind their members, because we need, you know, as much as possible for our CBD employees to park where we provided them spaces. And that's why we've done that. The Health Department has announced that January is National Radon Action Month. I did announce this last month as well, but we're going to provide free test kits at the Ridgewood Health Department for radon, which is on the 5th level, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4 p.m. Radon is a radioactive gas. It occurs naturally when uranium and radium break down in the soil. Radon gas moves up through soil and finds its way into homes. Radon is a serious health risk. It is the second leading cause of lung cancer and the leading cause of lung cancer among non-smokers. It's invisible and odorless, so it's easy to ignore this potential hazard. If the test indicates a radon problem, radon mitigation systems can be installed at a cost similar to that of other home repairs. A list of certified mitigation companies is also available at the Health Department. Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring Restaurant Week 2018 from January 14th to January 18th and January 21st to January 25th. Participating restaurants are offering the chance to experience dining in Ridgewood with a 3-course prefix menu at $25.18 and tax and tip and beverage. Please contact the restaurant for reservations and questions. These are listed on the Chamber's website. Ice skating has been extended at Van Song County Park, is 216 Forest Avenue in Paramus. The ice rink has been extended to Sunday, January 28th. Hours of operation are 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturday, and 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Sunday, and the cost is $10. Reminder again about the estate card. Using the estate card helps build up rewards and some tax benefits in the third quarter of the year. This coming Monday, January 15th, is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and in observance, village offices will be closed, and sanitation and recycling will not be picked up, and the recycling center will also be closed. And on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, there is a free community program which will feature the Reverend Dr. Calvin G. Sampson, as well as student speakers and an outdoor march. Dr. Sampson will deliver remarks addressing the theme, the fierce urgency of now, as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee of Ridgewood and Glen Rock hosts its 36th annual celebration of Dr. King's life and legacy. The community event, again, will take place this Monday, January 15th, at the Ridgewood United Methodist Church at 100 Dayton Street, starting at 10 a.m.
I actually have 2 questions. Danson Park, our tree that's there, can we find out, presumably they're all still lit, but we have our decorations on there,
Okay.
and we want to collect those back so that they're reused
For
again?
next year, right.
Right. And then that's our tree to bring back to Ridgewood
Correct.
and plant. So
Yeah, and actually, we'll indicate that if there are some trees that aren't claimed by a municipality,
we'll
we
take those.
certainly take those
We're happy
too.
to take those. I'm actually, because the last year they took the decorations and threw them away, so we
Okay.
really want to keep our decorations.
I'll make sure that.
Okay. If we can find out.
We'll follow up,
And then the other question is, on the Glenwood Road,
yes.
how are we getting information out to residents? Can we do an e-notice? Should we maybe hand out flyers or something for a day there as people are coming down? Because
We do have the speed signs for the overweight and overlength vehicles, both at the bottom, Hohokus has it, I believe at the bottom of Warren Avenue, or top of Warren Avenue, going up before they go up the hill, and we also put it up at the top of Glenwood Road, indicating that there should not be overlength and overweight vehicles.
Right.
But yes, we can certainly do an e-notice to remind them about.
that we're in this period and, the whole thing, just so
Yes,
everybody's
to
aware.
lay it out.
Right,
We
okay,
can
that
certainly
would be
do
good.
that.
Okay, great, thank you. Going on to council reports. right? Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Monday, the Special Project Task Force met, and the mayor and I were in attendance, and the discussion was to begin looking at various scenarios that the new tax bill might bring to the village and the budget and to residents. So we're just starting to map that out and see how we want to approach this, and we want to be forward-looking because we don't want to be caught surprised by anything. And then on Tuesday, last night, the Shade Tree Commission met downstairs, and we discussed the sycamore tree, obviously, and various ways to get information out about tree planting and the up-and-coming plantings for next fall, and communications. And we also discussed the possibility of bringing in an outside expert to design one of the tree wells, or design what we want to actually do with the tree wells. We have 4 experimental pits that we did with drainage and root guards and new soil. So we bring in somebody professional to assess that and then potentially give us you know, an upgraded design. So more to come on that. And that was everything I had.
Great, thank you. Councilman Walsh, birthday girl.
So I have two reports. So our citizen safety met after our last council meeting. So this is the first council meeting after that meeting, and we had a lot of stuff on our agenda. But what it kept coming back to was we refer to our Complete Streets program often. And there are a lot of people in the village that we realize really don't have a grasp of what that Complete Streets meant. So we were thinking that it might be a good idea for the council to kind of give a refresher to the residents about Complete Streets, what the goal is with a Complete Streets program, and help them to understand and help us to better understand all of the different applications we have for grants that tie in, such as the Safe Routes to School has to do with Complete Streets. So all of those different things tie into that. So if everybody has a better understanding, there won't be maybe some surprises when they say, what do you mean I have to do that? What do you mean it's Complete Street? You know, so we wanted to maybe put on our calendar, get copies, see if we can maybe make notes as to things that we want to update in the program, and also update the things that we have done since our Complete Street program was started. So that seemed to be a theme that kept coming up in meetings, so we wanted to, and I don't know if have you ever gone through, or have you guys gone through the full Complete Streets? Did you?
We've gone through.
You did, okay.
The resolution,
Yeah, you guys did, but you went through the reporting and all the other stuff? Okay. So it would be good, I think, for the public to refresh it and let them understand better what the process is in the program and why we do it.
So you want to do that on a future work session agenda?
Yeah,
We just
future
do a
work session,
presentation-
yeah,
a presentation. And who would do the presentation?
I think it can be collaborative with our chairman.
Okay, Charlie.
Maybe our engineer. Also, you know, we have a liaison from the police department that comes to our meetings. So that would be something else that, you know, we would talk about citizen safety and then, you know, again, talk about it here. The other thing, we were finalizing and actually updating our bylaws at Citizen Safety, because I guess the bylaws over the years had been loosely followed, is maybe a good way to say it. And the structure of citizen safety, like in the structure for citizen safety, it says that the village manager should be at the meetings. You didn't know. So we're going to make some recommendations that it said the village manager or her designee. And I said, you know, it's probably we'd be hard pressed to have Heather at every meeting, or her designee, because then that would mean that would be an additional employee, and we already have several employees at the meeting. So we're going to make some recommendations to the structure as we complete the bylaws. One of the other members of the structure that hadn't been attending has indicated that they do want to start attending, so the Federated HSA president, Melinda Cronk, will continue now to show up at the meetings. So that was one of the other changes. And then, like I said, we're just kind of going through, and some of the things are obsolete, so we're updating those, and we'll get that to the council for review. And then I have my Arts Council, Sheila's not here, and Beth. So Sheila and Beth actually also presented at our last citizen safety meeting, and that's why they sent the reports to all the council, so that the council, again, has a better understanding of what they're trying to get done. But again, it goes back to complete streets. And the stuff that they're working on really works in collaboration with what we're trying to do. So we wanted to kind of just do a refresher for the council on that as well. And I know that she sent the reports out, and that's why I suggested they come just kind of do a quick comment as opposed to waiting through the whole meeting and waiting till the end. So I thank them, even though they... and then we have Ridgewood Arts Council. So our next artist series is January 23rd. It's going to be 7:30 in the library auditorium. We have Eric Coriel coming, and he does a different type. He does like, I can't even really explain the type of art he does. It's like, he makes you feel like you're inside the art as it's happening.
What was the date on that?
The 23rd, January 23rd. And it's going to be at the library. And so we had our meeting actually last night, and we were talking about, Millennium Strategies had forwarded us a suggestion of a grant for the Arts Council to review. And since it was the first submission that we had, we as a group were a little concerned that we weren't really sure what the next steps should be, because, again, we're an advisory to the council, and it really would ultimately be the council directing the village manager on the grants. So they asked that I ask the council if your groups have done any submissions and what process you took to get to that next step, because it really, it's great, but it's a little daunting because we're not sure what we're supposed to be adding, if we should be contacting village employees. You know, and this was just the first submission for us, so we just wanted to be clear on the process without overstepping, without getting too far into it. So that's more of a...
Yeah, what's been happening with Millennium Strategies is they contact me about grant opportunities, and then I send it to either a department or a council person if they're a liaison to a group, which it would make sense. In this case, it's the NEA Big Read, and so it's coordinating arts events with libraries, actually.
Yeah.
And I think that if you needed to use village staff, you come to me. I did indicate that you and Audrey Fink would be the liaisons. But if the council wishes in the future, if it really pertains to a committee, like in this case it does, we could certainly bring it to the council and say, do you want them to pursue it or not? Because again, not all of these are 100%. Obviously, some are 50-50 grants, some are, 60-40. So you may decide, well, all right, you applied for this grant, but we really didn't want it. You know, we don't want to fund money that way.
Well, and that was the concern, because it was a grant that had a lot of moving parts to it that we felt would include not only the Arts Council, but would involve perhaps the schools and the library, and we can't really commit them to it. And then if we did go to them to partner with us, which would be great, but, you know, what would be the next step? It's a pretty big process.
This particular grant is unusual because of the fact that it does partner with libraries, and
it's got many
also
moving
partner
parts
with schools as well.
Yeah.
Most of them are pretty straightforward, and it's, do you want it for this purpose? You know, there's been things like recycling cans or different things like that. So it's less moving parts.
Yeah.
So I think possibly in this case, I don't know if you've come up with any ideas yet, or if you've had a
I mean,
chance.
we talked about it last night, and everybody had a different opinion. And, I mean, but it was a good working session in that we don't want to waste time because each one has a deadline.
Right.
So you kind of have to get up and running, and because this particular one had so many moving parts and was due like in a couple of weeks, we really felt that, you know, is this something, one, that the village really wants to apply to? Can we, as an arts council, make that determination, then, you know, come back to Heather, get the manpower, and, you know, that was the biggest concern. It's going to take a lot of manpower. And I don't know if you guys have done any with your groups.
No, I have
Because,
not.
yeah.
Maybe you have. You have.
Yeah, I got, I've been in contact with them, and they asked if there was any grants that we were interested in because of Sustainable Jersey, and so I said, well, last year we went for a 50-50 matching grant through PSE&G and Sustainable Jersey for tree inventory. And last year we had budgeted in the capital budget half of that, just in case we got the grant, and then we'd issue the notes, and then we'd go through with it. We were unsuccessful with the grant, so we haven't gotten to the point yet where they said, you know, are we going to go forward with this or not? And I was going to actually request to put it on the next work session agenda because it is a 50-50 matching grant, so I want to make sure that we were interested in continuing to fund this again.
Right.
But I did forward them the completed grant application that we submitted last year. So they're looking at that, and I haven't heard back from them. That was just a couple days ago, so I haven't heard back from them. So like I said, I think if it involves like a matching grant from the village, I think in any instance it should come before the council, especially if there's a 50-50 matching grant component.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah,
there's
this had no match, yeah.
community stewardship, CSIP, I always forget what the I stands for in it. But we're eligible for that now in 2018 because the Shade Tree Commission has been certified by the state, and it happened 2 weeks into January last year, so we were uneligible for 2017 because it has to be done the year before. So now that we're eligible for those grants, you could get, I think, up to $300,000 for tree planting, maintenance, different things like that. You could do like an inventory, so there might be other opportunities there. So I just kind of let them know, maybe you want to look around and see what, that's out of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So I just suggested maybe go in there and look around and see what grants are available for this year, and we would do the same on our end. And again, once we settled on an idea at the committee level, it's okay, this is something that we think, you know, we'd like to advise the council to move forward with. And once that decision was made, then it would come to the council, and then we would decide whether or not we want to fund it, or if it's a full grant, if we just want to apply for it and hopefully get it and make a decision.
Yeah.
Let me just ask, what was the commitment on the part of the schools that had, because if it's
The
not
commitment-
50-50, but...
Well, no, so the commitment for the grant was the actions. You had to have a minimum of 10 actions on, you had to pick a book, and then that book was the focus of everything else you did. And you had to commit to 10 different actions. The action could be an artist series. It could be, you know, working in the schools, working with the library. The library actually got this grant last year. They did the Boys in the Boat. And
That was community, right.
yeah, so they got it last year, but apparently it was it's very labor intensive, and you couldn't do it as one small committee. You have to involve the community for that type of a grant.
But it's also possible on some of those actions, just through structure and curriculum, they may have already have those in place.
No,
But-
because it's specific to the book, one book.
Got it.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to get in the weeds with just
Right,
this
got it.
grant,
No, I know.
but I think for us as a group, we were struggling with, should we go out, find the grants, submit them to Millennium, and do it that way so that we're not waiting for them to come up with one? Should we be searching?
If you have grants that you find,
Yeah.
let me know, because then we can go to Millennium, certainly, and
Yeah.
they can, be our grant writer, which is perfect.
Yeah.
So it works both ways, actually.
Yeah, because that might be the easier way to do it, because then we know what the commitment is with our workforce, and then you would be able to let us know what village personnel could help, or,
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
So,
that's fine.
might be, I'm just, it was a great learning experience, but still a little daunting.
Right.
No, you're right, and I agree, and I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the approach that we've been taking too, because, I shot them an idea, and they
Yeah.
shot me an idea, so, again, once the committee and the grant writers of Millennium kind of agree on everything, like, okay, I
Yeah.
think this is what we need to do, and now we have to get moving on it, then it would come here for council approval.
Right, right. So,
All right.
I just want to make the council aware, we applied for a few grants that are 100% grant funded. So in that case, we haven't brought it to the council because of the fact that if we receive it, it would be 100%, and, we feel it would be a benefit. So, as
Yeah,
long as you're okay with that.
yeah, I was more specifically thinking of, because we've talked about it at CSAC, and we've talked about it at RAC, so these are, and you've got REAC, and we've got all these different committees that we're part of, that we would then come to you. The stuff that you're doing, I'm assuming, is,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure you were okay with that.
yeah, this would be just for our committee grant.
Right,
funding.
right, I understand.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. So I, just reporting on the Central Business District Advisory Committee. We're going to have we're going to host the first Central Business District Community Forum a week from today. It's important because our businesses are a very important part of the community, but we get to hear very little from them. So what this will provide is an opportunity to have an open dialogue with them, for us to talk about, and us meaning the committee, to talk about what are the things that we've been focusing on, what are the challenges that the committee and the village have met in some of the implementation of some of the things that we've tried. But most importantly, to share some of the success stories that some of the businesses are having. Obviously, we're going to talk about the challenges that they're facing as business owners. And most importantly for us to get the feedback from this group as to what are the things that we could be doing to improve the Central Business District. So it's going to be only for the businesses. It's going to be here in Village Hall. And, hopefully it'll be the first of what should be a monthly series. And we understand that because of commitments and time constraints, not everyone will be there. So at least give folks the opportunity to be able to come in and talk to us. So we're very excited about that. I think it's a great start of the year to start with some dialogue and communication. And along the same vein, because I do have my own commitment to communication this year, I'm going to start a newsletter, a monthly newsletter, that residents can opt into to just update everybody on what's happening. One of the things that for us is that we work on so many things, and we assume that everyone knows everything that we're working on and what's happening. And unfortunately, when we don't communicate what we're doing, what are the things that are happening, things take sort of like a rumor, they just grow worse and worse and more distant from the truth.
Yeah.
So that's going to start, hopefully be able to send out the newsletter next week. So I'm very excited about that as well. The CBD Advisory Committee meets tomorrow. We'll be discussing, we're meeting here downstairs 8:30 in the morning. Part of the discussion will be, we'll have the presentation from the high school student who has designed the new in downtown Ridgewood .com website. Hopefully we'll be able to launch it soon. I know it's taking a little bit longer than expected. And then we're also going to talk about some of the projects and the things that we want to do going forward. Part of that would involve, partnering up with Ridgewood Arts Council, Shade Tree Commission, particularly with the Arts Council. How can you, as a business district advisory committee, team up with the Arts Council? Well, we have a lot of empty storefronts in the downtown, so we're maybe looking at a way that we can, with the help of the Arts Council, and we can find some creative ways to fund it, to find the opportunity to have some of these storefronts decorated, so that when you're looking into it, you're not seeing the back wall of an empty store, which I just think just helps in terms of the aesthetics and the message that we're sending out there. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was on this newsletter, I think it's also, you know, an opportunity to provide maybe some topical discussion. So maybe it's something like the complete streets, just sort of a little write-up as to what it means, what, you know, assuming that not everybody tunes into the village council meetings. It's just a way to keep people engaged and informed, so. And that's all I have.
So, let's see. 4th of July committee was canceled Monday night due to weather, which was a good thing because at the same time, in the same evening, we had the Special Project Task Force, and to the Deputy Mayor's point, it was a very robust conversation about tax reform and the initiatives of the charitable contributions and how that may or may not work. Let's see, so 4th of July was actually rescheduled for Tuesday, January 16th at 7:30 p.m., which is now in conflict with my planning board meeting, same day, same time. So what the July 4th committee is actually looking for right now is suggestions, recommendations for themes, and ideas for this year's 2018 July 4th. So if anyone has any ideas for themes, something that hasn't been done in the recent past or ever, please send those in by email to me, and we'll certainly share those forward. As I said, the planning board meeting is Tuesday evening, 7:30, right here. On deck for Tuesday evening are 2 resolutions, one for Ken Smith and the second for the Enclave, and those will memorialize those approvals for those applications with all conditions of approval. So that is Tuesday evening. And on the 18th, which is Thursday, is Community Access Network. And the only other thing we have is tomorrow evening downstairs in the garden room is Historic Preservation Commission, and on deck for that is 2 actual residences, which is highly unusual. We don't typically get many residences there. One is on South Broad, the proposed removal of addition and staircases and to install a deck, and the other is for an East Saddle River Road location for a restoration project of the exterior walls. So those are always nice when we see the homes being restored properly with the proper historic elements. And let's just see, that should be it. Okay, and that's mine. With that, we go back to public comment.
Rorick Holiday 374 Evergreen. I'll make some comments about some of the comments that were made. First, about the taxes. I really appreciated Matt Rogers' insights and wisdom in his advice. And as I listened to the back and forth between Ms. Walsh and the mayor, I couldn't but feel much more comfortable with Ms. Walsh's soundness. I'm not trying to pick on you, Ms. Knudsen.
It's just par for the course.
Just that it was, no, it isn't par for the course, because I want you to succeed. I have nothing against you.
Right.
I really don't have anything against you.
Right.
You know it. Just that I'm a 78-year-old man who's lived here for 50 years, and it pains me to see what Ridgewood is going through. Okay? Now, while your advice was more what I would call belly up to the bar tax advice, you know, I heard this, how about doing that? Let's be very, very sound. We're going through uncharted territory here, and it is like walking into a big trap. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. As far as the trucks, Ridgewood has a reputation for being the worst town to do business in, and the debate you had is exactly a good example why it is. Run it one way, run it back way. Again, I appreciate what Matt Rogers said with the engineer. Leave it to the contractor. They know what the heck they're doing. They're not going to be running kids over. They're not going to be, you know, collapsing basements and flooding basements and stuff like that. They know what they're doing. And, you know, 16 trucks a week is nothing. So let's get it done. Finish with it. Stop telling people what to do. As far as the garage, I mean, I don't know enough to have an authoritative opinion, But the instinct I have listening to Chris is that the demand is much weaker than we think. Just the fact that 23 people asked for documents means nothing. And here I agree with the mayor that we should extend it until the 15th or 18th of February, whatever it is. I mean, we've been waiting 60 years for a garage. Plus, frankly, I don't think I'll live long enough to see a garage. It might be in the interest of those running for office this year to show that they want to see a garage. But you know something? You know, let's do it right. Let's do it right. As far as the tree on Graydon, instead of worrying about what to do with the waste wood, and maybe Mr. Haché has a good idea, you can take the bulk of it and do something with it. But why not ask the Shade Tree Commission to work with the grade school students to come up with ideas as to what tree it should be replaced with. It'll be a great study for them to say it should be this tree and that tree and etc. Then you can have a naming commission, a naming opportunity where, because you can buy a tree about this high, you can buy a tree much bigger, and you have to pay much more for it. I know my wife will probably kill me, but I mean, I'd be willing to contribute, let's say, $1,000 for a cedar of Lebanon. This is something that will outlast all of us by 1,000 times. And maybe a few of the Lebanese mafia could get together to do that. Someone else could plant an oak tree or a sycamore or an elm or what have you. It'd be a great opportunity to really focus people on the village. My last comment, and Mr. Rogers, I'm not sure you like what I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was so impressed with the comments you made this evening. I said, wouldn't it be great if you were to run for village council? We need your wisdom. We need your brains. Now, coming from me, probably you won't take it as a compliment, but I meant it as a compliment.
No, I take it as a compliment.
Thank you very much. So anyway, that and 50 cents would buy a cup of coffee. But as far as the tree, again, it's a great opportunity for the kids and the Shade Tree Commission to come up with ideas. Thank you.
Hello.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, Mr. Rogers. Andrew Kohut, K-O-H-U-T, Wells, Jaworski, and Lehman, 12 Route 17 North, here on behalf of Ridgewood Dayton. First, I don't know if it's too late, but a belated Happy New Year to everybody. Hope everyone had a good New Year.
Me too.
I just was curious, because I was writing as fast as I can. Two of the conditions on the soil moving permit, it dealt with something not being done in a school zone and no driving between East Ridgewood Avenue between, and I couldn't write down fast enough those two things.
Broad and Maple. The main drag, basically, if
Okay.
you take it downtown Ridgewood, you wouldn't really want trucks going down that way.
Gotcha. And there was something about the school zone, no,
Yeah, during drop-off and pickup, that they didn't want trucks going in the vicinity of the schools.
great. I appreciate it. I hope everyone has a good night.
Thanks, Andrew.
Marsha Ringel, 250 Ferris Place. First, I want to commend the village for seeking a second opinion about the tree. We have competent staff, and seeking a second opinion, as people do with doctors and lawyers all the time, in no way reflects any lack of confidence in the original determination or assessment, and sometimes it's important to take that extra step, and this was one of them. And many of us really appreciate that. It just feels a little bit less horrible to think that the tree may have to go. If two experts say it, we understand. So for clarification of going forward, did I hear correctly that the council is going to welcome or invite suggestions for what to do with the tree? Okay, so where would they go? In other words, does the person have to come to the next council meeting, or somebody?
They can send me an email, a letter.
To you?
Yes, and then I'll
Okay.
share them with the council.
Okay. And is there some kind of deadline? Do we know roughly when this would happen?
Well, it's not going to happen with snow on the ground. So I don't know exactly. You know, it was slated for December. Obviously, that didn't happen because we were waiting for the arborist report.
Right.
I can find out from our Parks Department and see when, you know, they're thinking of doing it. It may not be till the spring, I don't know. It may be sooner, so, do you know?
I don't know, but
Okay.
it was part of the discussion last night, and because they'd probably, the positioning of it, and to take it down on the island, and then there's the soft ground, there's the sand, there's the plumbing underneath for the pumps for grade and pool and everything, it would be ideal to take it down in the winter when the ground is
I see. When it's
frozen.
hard.
But they would have to have probably individual climbers get up in the tree and cut it down piece by piece, again, because you wouldn't be able to get too heavy equipment up there, and the island is about 3 feet on a wall. You'd have to build a ramp. It would be an incredible project to get equipment in there. And sycamore trees are really bad to cut down because there's much more sawdust, and there's a lot of respiratory infections that climbers get when they have to cut it down. So if they do it when the ground is frozen and it's colder, that cuts down on the sawdust by about 50%, and then the ground's harder, so it could support some of the mid-size equipment, I guess you'd have to get in around there. So it would probably happen, you know, they were waiting for a council decision one way or the other to see what would come out to, but, you know, it'd probably happen maybe in January at the end of the month, or February, or somewhere where, you know, it's colder weather, and it would be better to, you know, better for the employees to get up there and take it down, and safer for them.
I can have a date for you by next week's meeting, just to let you know. And so I would say get your, you know, if people have suggestions, they should get them in within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And is there any assurance that another sycamore or something similar will replace it?
That was also a discussion, and because it's in the swimming pool and it's surrounded by water for a good part of the year, you have to take into account how much ground and cubic yards of soil is actually there to support a tree. And putting in a bigger tree, like say a 10-inch or a 12-inch tree, is much more expensive. It's around $15,000 or $17,000, and for every inch, it takes that long in years for it to actually establish. So it wouldn't grow as fast, and there's a good chance that it might not grow at all. So then you would spend all this money and you only get a year warranty on it, and if it's not established in 8 to 10 years, it could die in year 5, and then you're stuck. So they said if you put in a smaller tree, it wouldn't be as big right off the bat, but because it would establish much quicker and it would grow to its natural rate of growth, in like 20 or 25 years, it would probably be about the same size as a larger tree would. You just wouldn't have that impact first. Plus, then there was discussions of like a grove of black tupelo trees, and there's nothing really set in stone yet, so the Shade Tree Commission wanted to work with experts and come up with several recommendations for the council based on just where the tree is and what you have to do to plant trees there and what species will survive, and you wouldn't want something that's going to be dropping fruit or it'd be too messy there. So there's a lot of consideration, and that might take you know, several months to come up with and discuss and bring to the council.
So possibly in the fall, they would be planted, which is a typical time anyway?
The fall is the best time for planting season, and depending on droughts and the weather and everything else, if you want to plant a tree anywhere between September and the end of December, if you possibly can. So I think we have enough time to discuss what we want to do, and then, you know, bring it to the council and have meetings. And we're, you know, Shade Tree Commission meetings meet the second Tuesday of every month at 7:30 downstairs in the garden room, appropriately in Village Hall. So they're always open to the public, and anybody who would want to come and suggest something or send an email or anything like that, you're more than welcome to.
Okay, and Councilman Hachey, could you say where that could be seen that you were describing? Do you know where you saw that? Did you just sort of see it and then it went away?
It was at a restaurant in Montville, and I'll send you a photograph.
Oh, okay.
But it's
Montville or Montvale?
Montville. It's at Rails Steakhouse. Rails Steakhouse.
Okay.
And it's the piece of art is called Disjointed Tree, I think it's the name of it. I don't know who the artist is.
Okay.
But it's striking. You walk in, it's very impressive, and we have a lot more vertical clearance here to do it. Obviously, we might have to, you know, put some reinforcements in the ceiling and so on, but I think it'll be a beautiful project.
Did you take a picture at all?
I have pictures. I'll send them to you.
Oh, okay. All right, so I was thinking it was even conceivable we might want some kind of taking down ceremony, but I don't know if there would be time to organize that. Okay.
Why don't we, a couple of things. I've had a lot of residents who've shared ideas for what could be done with the tree. So if you, and I know you've shared your idea as well already. Councilman Hache shared his, the deputy mayor. I have my own idea, which I happen to really like, but who cares?
Right.
So we'll take all of those, and then once we know the day, once we have like a little bit of window of opportunity to organize something if we want to, we certainly will share that with you. And as Preserve Graydon, certainly that would be an opportunity to put something together.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Again, on the subject, or continuing with the subject of the tree, since there's been so much discussion, concern about the tree, I'm wondering, is there going to be a resolution that the council is approving the removal of the tree? I did not hear the manager read that as one of the resolutions that's scheduled for next week, but I'm wondering if that is a good idea, so that there is no doubt that this was approved by the council.
All right.
We can do that, that's easy enough.
Okay.
All right, we'll add that.
It just may be a good idea so that nobody says, well, how did this all happen? As sometimes it happens. During Mr. Rudischauser's comments regarding the soil movement permit, there was some discussion, or he mentioned a possible route, which was to make a left turn out of the old Brogan Cadillac site, go across Ridgewood Avenue, down North Broad Street, and then make a right on Franklin. He mentioned that as a possibility, but then he said that this, quote, is not an optimum route for this type of truck traffic, unquote. That kind of surprises me, because where are the trucks from Ken Smith going to go? They are right on Franklin Avenue. Certainly there is not going to be a proposal that they leave the site and go southbound on Broad Street and then continue down Broad Street into Glen Rock. I would think that in the case of Ken Smith, they would be going down Franklin Avenue, so...
I think he did say, he said that Ken Smith would be going down Franklin Avenue. He did say
So
that.
why would that not be an optimum route for other truck
I think the
traffic?
concern was the intersection at Broad Street and Ridgewood, and the cars that are angled parking and backing out onto Broad Street, having the truck coming in. I think that was the concern, not Franklin Avenue as an outlet,
Okay.
but getting to Franklin Avenue.
Well, I guess my comment is that Ridgewood is a residential community. There really is no optimum route anywhere.
No, there isn't.
There really isn't.
That's very
Broad Street and Prospect Street are residential neighborhoods, so...
You can't hold up the permit on a
No,
developable...
I'm not
just saying.
suggesting...
So they gotta go somewhere. So you have to figure
I'm
out
not
what the best
suggesting
one
that the permit be held up. I know that there's potential legal action against the village if we hold the permit up, but I do believe that we need to specify the route that needs to be taken as opposed to just leaving it up to the contractor.
Done. That'll be done. It has to be approved by the chief of
Okay.
police and the engineer.
But again, my comment is that in Ridgewood, there really is no optimum route. Any route that you take is going to put you through a residential neighborhood eventually. Linwood Avenue is residential, Ridgewood Avenue is residential near the high school and beyond the high school. Prospect Street is residential. It's really unfortunate that there's no other way to remove this.
Unless you're developing on Route 17, it
Right.
really isn't a good place.
Now, but I do want to say about the speed hump, I kind of disagree with Mr. Rogers. I do think that that needs to be put in the resolution, because there will be an expense associated with the removal of the speed hump and the reinstallation of the speed hump. And we all know how businesses are. They try to avoid expense. So it might be that the contractor decides that they are not going to remove the speed hump, and that's going to be really upsetting to the people in that neighborhood.
I said it's not necessary. I didn't, when they, the manager and the engineer said they would like it in there.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Right, we said, yeah,
But
I thought we
they're
did.
not gonna not do the project because they have to remove the speed hump. I mean,
Okay, yeah, I do think that that should be a condition of the approval of the soil movement permit, that the speed hump be removed and replaced at the expense of the contractor. My final comment is that I was somewhat disappointed that there was no mention made tonight about the results of the valet parking program. There was discussion about the parking garage, and I do believe that the results of the valet parking program might impact your decision with respect to the parking garage. It's my understanding that we had an initial goal in order for the taxpayers to break even that 250 cars be parked. I don't know whether that was a night or a weekend, but nowhere near 250 cars were parked on any given weekend, on any given night. So I guess my conclusion from that is there really a parking problem? If people weren't valet parking their cars, and there was plenty of parking in the cottage lot, and there was plenty of parking in the walnut lot, why are we thinking about spending $9 million plus for a garage? So I would hope that perhaps during the course of the next meeting or the meeting following that, either the manager or Mr. Hache can give a detailed report to the taxpayers of how many cars were parked, how much money was spent. We really need to know that before we go forward with spending $9 million on a garage. If there was nobody valet parking their cars, that means there's going to be nobody using the garage. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And if there's no one else?
I just wanted to mention, since no one else is going to speak, that we are going to have a report on January 31st. We just needed to get all the figures and put it together to give to the council. So that will be discussed January 31st.
Just real quick, before we end, what is the meeting we're going to do, the public presentation on the bid process? So we want to add that to an upcoming
Right.
agenda, and I know Councilwoman Walsh has hers, so what meeting did
I
we?
mean, it could be the 31st or it could be February 7th, either one.
Yeah, so maybe we want to do that on the 31st, and if you're okay, we'll do your presentation for Complete Streets in February. So everybody knows that we're doing that public presentation on both the bid process and on the 31st, and then Complete Streets that first week in February. Okay, so with that, we'll take a resolution. Did somebody else have a comment? Nope, okay. Resolution to go into closed session.
Be resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on January 10th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and that said closed session be held in the caucus room on the 4th floor of Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to legal matters to include appointments to boards and committees, personnel matters to include the reappointment of the registrar, contract negotiations to include the Elks Club. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 et sec, and be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by the resolution of the Village Council. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank
Good
you.
night.